Hello, my name is Ramik Scott, and this is my presentation on class, race, equity, and access. One of the first articles I wanted to talk about was found on a Georgia State University website. It was written by Claire Miller, and this was a presentation done by David Berliner, who is a professor emeritus at Arizona State. He stated that one of the biggest issues that we don't realize as it pertains to education is income, that it is fastly becoming one of the bigger issues other than race itself. And he stated that um, even teaching effectiveness is not as important as in addressing poverty issues. He also said the influence on willingness to learn for students comes from the church, their community, the parents, etc. And if they're in a low income area, there is less willingness for them to learn based on the fact that there are so many other pressures that low income families have at home that affect their willingness to learn. One of his solutions, he says, to the problem is job creation and assistance to help those people get out of the poverty cycle so their concentration can be more on learning. And the next article that I had was race and gender. This article was by Diane Pollard. It was off of the ASCD.org website. She says that you can't address race without addressing gender. They're intertwined. She says that the conflict of race and gender is due to three ways of thinking: either or thinking, hierarchical thinking, universal thinking. Either or thinking is being that we're being taught, or we've always been taught, that there is right or wrong, yes or no. It's an either or type of thing. Even teachers are taught that they have to select either one type of curriculum or another, or one textbook or another, and that either or thinking also permeates down to children who also have to choose either to associate themselves, identify themselves with their race or their gender. So that creates the conflict within as far as how we view our race and our gender. It's not together. Also, we're taught about hierarchy, meaning that it is hierarchical thinking as far as one group is privileged over another. That is actually a thinking that we've been raised, or we see, children see, meaning images on TV, media, even down to the classroom, how white children may be addressed versus black children, um, and how boys maybe or men are seen over women, even in history. Slavery, how it's addressed, and it may not be addressed more so than just an indentured servitude type issue. No specifics about what happened in the whole slavery movement, even with women, the whole women's movement. Um, it's called suffrage as opposed to women's rights, and portrays that women are the weaker sex. Um, so some of the solutions that she offered is we need to change our thinking methods and go to both and or inclusive thinking to create a better way and make students feel that because their race and their gender are one and the same, it's not separate for them. They can embrace both. Also, the next article was more specific to gender. This article I found on the a website that was called edchange.org. Amanda Chapman was the one who wrote about this. She speaks about how girls and boys learn at a pretty much similar rate until they get to about middle school. And girls tend to receive more negative attention than boys do. And that we do what she calls gender socialization, where we make awareness to the fact that girls are unequal to boys, as far as different behaviors with boys and how they can, oh, boys will be boys type mentality that even administration or people in leadership roles do as well. Teachers also have girls to socialize towards feminine ideals, meaning if it's a female teacher, sometimes they may say what little girls shouldn't do that or girls don't do that. Or boys shouldn't say that, or a little bit, it's that type of mentality that she says that is being promoted in the classroom. And she talked about a study that was done by Diane Ray back in 2001 that broke up girls into about 4 different groups, and they ranged from nice girls to tomboys, and how at the end of the study the girls had basically associated their femininity within those groups. They defined their own femininity based on those groups. Also, sexual harassment, even if it's a little thing where, boys may be looking under girls' skirts, which is what we've always encountered, but how that is addressed or not addressed or lack of addressing it. And she specifically said that there is gender bias in the curriculum that we teach more specifically towards another gender than another. I know when I was in school, I didn't learn a whole lot about women. It was more about the history that males had created and wars fought, and all these are incorporated with men. Nothing really specific, like Joan of Arc was mentioned, but there was no in-depth study about who she was, for example. Um, I know in Nordhaus, when I reread chapter 15 about that gender-specific things, um, they needed to, we as leaders, or we who will be in leadership roles, need to definitely look at solutions for making sure our curriculums or the curriculum can be incorporated where it is fair to all genders, and that we make sure that we're inclusive and not exclusive when we do things. And that's what her solution was, to find curriculums or more resources to change gender bias curriculums, but they have to be something that is addressed and something that administration wants to, or leadership wants to look at and say, yes, we may have a issue with gender bias type curriculum and what to do about it going forward. Now, also, the next article was very interesting because it incorporated, kind of like the first article, race and income. Instead of it being specifically a race, it was saying in this article, which I found actually on the Huffington Post, they were speaking about the fact that they were speaking about races other than African Americans, Latinos, and Asians, and how income also affects the learning in schools right now. Actually, one of the things they talked about initially was segregated learning, and that African Americans and Latinos study in racially isolated classrooms, according to the Huffington Post article. And some of the statistical things that they gave were the racial makeups for Latinos was 80% and 74% for blacks in schools where the majority are not white, meaning they were more so other ethnicities as opposed to being white. And there was a report that was done from the Civil Rights Project, which they are out of UCLA. They talked about the average black or white, I'm sorry, the average black or Latino student goes to school where low-income students account for double the proportions of poor students than the average white or Asian student. And then another issue in that same report addressed northern schools versus southern schools, and how they deal with segregation. Actually, they said the most dramatic segregation is present in southern schools for African Americans. There are more segregation of black students in New York, Illinois, and Michigan. And the only states that they saw that they had most integration was in Washington, Nebraska, and Kansas. And there was also a lot of segregation for Latinos in California, New York, and Texas. And they spoke about the current trends was because of the access to resources, and the access to resources for whites and the wealthy were more. They had more educational advantages due to that. And at the final part of that study was saying that the gap of achievement between whites and any other minorities continues to widen, and that is due to income disparity, resources not being available, and inadequate access to teachers that have experience. So that was the issues that that article dealt with. And the last article that I did do, I call it the RCG project. I found this on the amle.org website. It was written by Martha Caldwell. She speaks of a project that was done at a school in an eighth grade class, and they did what they call shared experiences. This is the new phrase called RCG, and they did a huge school study, and they allowed all the students from different races, from different ethnic backgrounds, social backgrounds, class backgrounds, gender backgrounds to come together and learn about each other. And they did different types of studies like interpersonal learning activities. They did seminars, they did writings, they also did inquiry-based learning, and and what it did was it promoted more critical thinking and basically put that person in the other person's shoes, whether it was a white girl who didn't understand what a black boy would go through. She would learn something from that experience as well. And I took from this project something that I would incorporate in once I get into a leadership role or into a teaching role to make sure that the students understand each other. This would be something that I would do maybe once or twice a week because they would do group sessions where they would sit in the middle of the floor and there would be an inner circle and an outer circle, and the inner circle would be the circle that would speak on whatever they were, be it they were black boys, black girls, or whatever, and speak of their experiences of being who they are. And then the outer circle would observe and learn from that. And I think that that could be incorporated, and that would cover everything about race, class, and gender, because then it puts everybody on an even footing to learn and respect each other. And I think that was a very important concept that I think that anybody should do. And the results of that study that they did was it started out as a like 6 month study, her and an assistant, and then it ended up being a year long because the students responded so positively. And not only did that it happen that way, that the students were speaking of it so much that it ended up teachers came to them, other teachers came to them and incorporated it into their classes as well. So I see this as something that I would use and I think could be a good tool to get everyone on board with, and from administration to other teachers, so that just like in our Hoy book speaks of the classroom, the social climate can be better and conducive to learning. Overall, I learned a lot about just looking up these items, how important all of these topics are, and that they are all interrelated, and that we are influenced by them every day in just our everyday lives. Just learning as a struggle as an African American woman, not knowing what maybe a white female or white woman may go through. I find that I need to understand that as well. So um, in order for me to be an effective leader, to be an effective teacher, I need to have an open mind about how to perceive and get across a learning environment with these topics specifically. So this has been a very learning, eye-opening experience, and I've enjoyed it. So that's my presentation on race, class, gender, and access. Thank you.